Hey, everybody. My name is Carter Sickels, and I want to tell you a little bit about my novel, and I'll just read a short excerpt from it. So my novel is called The Prettiest Star, and isn't that a really beautiful cover? And it's going to be out on May 19th with Hub City Press, and you can order it now, and I would very much appreciate that. So let me give you a little bit of setup, and then I'll read just briefly from the novel. I can't see myself on the screen, so I hope this is turning out okay. So a little setup. The Prettiest Star is set in 1986, and it takes place in a small town in southeastern Ohio. For a little setup, this is 1 year after Rock Hudson died from AIDS, and already thousands of people, the majority gay men, had died. Thousands more were HIV positive. President Reagan hadn't publicly addressed the nation yet. By the following year, 40,000 people had died of AIDS. The main character of my novel, The Prettiest Star, is Brian Jackson, a 24-year-old gay man who left for New York in 1980 when he was 18 years old. And now, with the loss of his boyfriend and so many of his friends, and he himself is HIV positive, he writes a letter to his parents asking to come back to the home he couldn't wait to escape. His little sister, Jess, is 14, and she hasn't seen Brian since she was 8. And she doesn't know why he left exactly or why he's come back. And Jess has her own dreams. She wants to be a marine biologist. She's never even been to the ocean. Their parents have decided not to tell anyone why Brian has come back, and they want to keep his queerness and his HIV status a secret. So Brian goes back and he records his kind of final summer using his video camera, which is something that his boyfriend, Sean, always wanted him to do. So I'm just going to read a short excerpt. So just give me a second here. Pull it up. Okay. So I'm going to read to you from Jess's point of view first, and then just read briefly from Brian's perspective. So this is from Jess's first chapter. This is before Brian has returned. The killer whales are the most misunderstood of the whales. To begin with, although everyone calls them whales, they're actually dolphins. For hundreds of years, people believed killer whales were man-eaters. It's not true. They don't attack humans. Killer whales travel in pods and hunt, play, and rest together. In the wild, the females can live up to 100 years. A mother's offspring stays with her for life. They mourn their dead. My mother fakes interest. Something is wrong. She hardly ever comes downstairs except to do laundry, and she's not much of a TV watcher. Will you look at that, she says, eyes on the screen. How can that be real? The show has moved on to blue whales, the biggest mammal on Earth. One parts the ocean like a giant submarine. A close-up shows its enormous battle-scarred body, all the nicks and healed-over cuts and scrapes, cement-colored barnacles clinging to it like clusters of dead flowers. Bigger than any of the dinosaurs, the man says in his calm voice. Its heart is the size of a Volkswagen Bug. Facts I already know. When I was little, I pored over the pictures in the sea, part of a collection of books from the Life Nature Library my grandmother gave me and my brother one Christmas. We also had Early Man, the mammals, the universe. I saw my first episode of The Undersea World of Jacques Cousteau when I was 4 or 5, and after that I was hooked. I want to be a marine biologist, but I live in Ohio. I've never even been to the ocean. I reach into the box of Cheez-Its. You're going to ruin your supper, my mother says. My mother doesn't eat junk food, and she's always on a diet, even though she isn't fat, not like my aunts. I'm not either, but I'm plump. That was what one of my Sunday school teachers said about me. Plump is a horrible word, like chunky. My mother is pretty. Everyone thinks so. She even looks like a movie star in one of those old black and white movies that run on Saturday afternoons when nothing else is on except baseball or kung fu. Jess, honey, there's something I need to tell you. This was what she sounded like the day she told me about sex. When a man and woman love each other, when they're married, she'd started, using the same teacher voice she's using now, and I wanted to die hearing my mother say the word penis. What? I ask. The orange crackers are the size of postage stamps, and I drop them one at a time in my mouth, splintering and crushing them with my teeth. The corners of her lips lift, but they are pressed too tightly to turn into a smile. She's still wearing her work clothes, iron tan slacks, a navy blouse with a scooped neck, and her makeup is soft around the eyes. Unlike my grandmother, my mother believes makeup shouldn't call attention to itself, but only be used to enhance natural beauty. When I turned 14, she told me I was allowed to wear blush and lip gloss, but I hardly ever put it on. I don't look right in it, not like the girls at school. It's about your brother, she says. Brian? I ask stupidly, as if I have more than one. He's coming home. My mother's eyes, a light brown, like watered-down Pepsi, the same color as mine, glisten, but no tears fall. She tells me he'll be here this weekend. To visit, I ask? To stay? A little sigh escapes. Her shoulders sink. We don't know yet. I have a million questions, and she says we'll talk more during supper after my father gets home. She needs to check on the meatloaf, she says. She kisses me on the forehead, and the fruity, soapy scent of Charlie, her work perfume, lingers after she's gone. The invisible man on TV, in his trusting, all-knowing voice, explains they still don't know where the blue whales go to breed, somewhere deep in the ocean that scientists can pinpoint. As a marine biologist, I will work for National Geographic or Nova. I'll go out on a boat in the middle of the ocean, no sign of land for miles. Blue, more blue. Brian and I used to watch Jacques Cousteau together. One time, he brought home the record Songs of the Humpback Whale, and we listened to it stretched out on our backs across the carpet, pretending we were floating in the sea. I dust off my hands. My mouth tastes salty and dry. A sperm whale lifts its gigantic, wrinkled head out of the water. Then the screen goes to static. The tape ran out before the show ended. I curl my knees up to my chest, wrap my arms around them. Suddenly I feel very small. I haven't seen my brother since I was 8 years old. Sometimes Brian would let me come in his room and we'd listen to records and play Go Fish, candles dripping wax, David Bowie singing about moon age daydreams in outer space, and a starman. Thick, flowery scent of incense. Brian blew cigarette smoke out the cracked windows, talked about California, New York, dream states, he said, where people went to be free. After he left, my parents told me he was away at college. I didn't know anyone who'd gone to college, and I believed them for a couple of years, until my grandmother told me the truth. He'd gone to New York, which to most people in Chester made about as much sense as saying you were going to live on Mars. If you left, you'd meet the same fate as Major Tom and his tin can. There are other stories about him, too. When I was younger, I told kids about the movie stars and rock singers he hung out with, the parties, the money. I never knew any of this. I made up a life for him. I had to, because he just disappeared, like those missing kids on milk cartons. But nobody kidnapped him. He just went. My parents, except for those early lies about college, don't talk about him. Nobody does. Nobody except for my grandmother. She tells me stories about my brother and has never doubted one day he'd come back home. And then I'm just going to read a very short section from Brian's point of view. So Brian is recording himself, and so he's recording these kind of video diaries and kind of speaking directly to the camera. Today, I want to tell you about my life in the before the ghosts, and how all that changed. When I first got to New York, it took me a month or so to work up the courage to go to a gay bar. I was terrified walking into that room of men. It didn't take long for one to come over, mustached, older, wearing a muscle shirt. He took me home. I had never even kissed a guy before. He treated me to breakfast, and the next day said he'd call. He never did. It didn't matter. New York was all dancing with shirts off, bare chest bumping. With sex inside our hearts, we moved in ways we had never been allowed to before. I had sex. I fell in love with the city, with men. Men who looked at me like nobody ever had before. Everything I used to dream about, but better. Before we started dying, we were part of a dream, an electric dream. Alive and young, I danced and fucked and loved, stayed out all night, snorting just one more line, ordering just one more round. Now it's all vitamins and juices, pills and pretend treatments. My first couple of years in the city, I heard rumors about something called GRID, gay cancer. But even in New York, it seemed far away. Who got it? Older rich gays who worked on Wall Street and spent their summers on Fire Island, worlds away from poor artists and faggots of the East Village. Then, a few weeks after I met Sean, a friend of his died. Sean told me things were going to get bad. I didn't understand. I don't think most of us did. He was right, of course. More guys started getting sick. You'd see a guy at a party with horrific, purple, cancerous marks of KS all over his face, trying to make small talk and act normal. Emaciated guys limping along on walkers. I was scared. We all were. Afraid of someone sweating on you, touching you. That was before we know what we know now. Before AIDS was on the news in magazines like Time and Newsweek, on TV shows. Before it had become a regular part of our lives. He started hearing things, who'd gone back to their families, who was in the hospital, who was dead. I had a friend, Troy Benton, who lost his mind. A 27-year-old turned into an old senile man. All these young men in the prime of their lives. You'd see a guy who looked fine and run into him a few months later and he'd be puttering around on a cane. Or someone would just drop out. You wouldn't see him anymore at the bars or the bathhouses or art shows or dinners, and you knew he was sick or dead. It wasn't like someone would say, I have AIDS or I have HIV. They'd just disappear. When I finally went in for the test, I wasn't surprised. Still, you don't want to believe, even after your brilliant, beautiful boyfriend dies in a shitty hospital room, even after you've seen friends and lovers wasting away. You want to believe you're different. It's impossible to understand or explain what it feels like when you're told you're going to die. Back in New York, some days I wanted to breathe in every second. I'd notice little things like a scrawny tree pushing up through the cement and feel grateful I was a part of the city I loved. Other days I was a sobbing mess. Still other times I burned up with anger toward everyone who was not me because they were alive, living their goddamn lives, and I was sick. And people knew it, especially other gays. I had that look. I know because I'd seen it in others. A haunted, haunted look. My body once turned men on, but now they turned away. And here I am, alive in Ohio, where we do not speak of the dead. Let us pretend. Where are all my beautiful men? Thank you. I'm going to stop there. So just a reminder, the book is The Prettiest Star, and it will be available on May 19th, but you can order now. And I just want to thank Saints and Sinners. I wish that we could have had our conference. I was really looking forward to it, but maybe next year. Fingers crossed. Okay. Be well, everyone. Stay safe. Stay home. And I'll catch you all later. Bye.